Welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and this is 8150, and we are on Module 1, and this is High Poly Modeling a Food Can Part 4. So let's go ahead and continue where we left off. Right-click over the object and go to Face Mode, and then select one of the faces up here that we're going to extrude out, and then hold the Shift key down and double-click, and that should create an edge loop all the way around. Okay, so with that done, then we want to go into Extrude. So we want to do a Control E. So Control plus E to extrude. And then we're going to go ahead and move this arrow out. Okay, we want to move it out about to the amount that we have a lip on the edge of the can. Okay. Alright, we don't want too much of an edge. Too much of an edge would make it look kind of cartoonish looking. So let's pull that back a little bit like that. There we go. Now the problem with this is that the first thing I did was I judged the distance of the thickness of the can earlier. But now I notice that it is way too thick right now, so it looks unrealistic. So what I want to do with that is I want to go in there and change that. So let's go ahead and click off anywhere in the gray area, and then I want you to right click over the object and go to Edge Mode. Again, click off anywhere in the gray area, and then I want you to select this edge, double click on this edge, and it should follow that edge all the way around the top. And I want you to hold down the Shift key and double click on the edge just below it. So above and below. Okay. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hit the R key, and we're going to go ahead and from the top view, okay, go ahead and hit the space bar and go to the top view. There we go. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and with the red key, or excuse me, the red scaling, we're going to click on it and we're going to move it just a little bit closer to the edge. Okay? Right. Now I'm going to do Control Z. Control Z back again. This time, instead of doing it non-uniform, you could do that, but it's kind of a guessing game with that. So if we click on the middle one, this is going to be uniform, and if we do that, let's go to the perspective view now, hit the space bar again. Now what we can't do is go beyond that line right here. Okay, you can't go into it, otherwise it'll cause some issues and problems. But we want to get pretty close to that. Okay, all right. So something like that will work just fine. Okay, all right. So that'll work there. So we've got that edge on top. Right, so now what we want to do is we want to go in here and add edge loops, because if we hit the 3 key, which gives us a smooth preview of what it might look like. So let's go ahead and take a look. So right now it looks like this. When I click off, this is what the food can looks like. Okay. And when I click, let's go ahead and right click over it and go to Selection Mode. And up here, if you notice that it keeps going back and forth from between component and object mode. So this is object mode right now. If I right click over it and go to face mode, now we're in component mode. Now if we go to the top of the kind of just below the main menu bar, if we click on this guy right here, this is our object mode. This is our component mode. Okay? So if you get stuck in component mode and you keep trying to go to selection mode, and every time you click on it, it goes back again, just like what I'm showing you here. Okay, when I click off and then click on it again, what's happening is that even though I'm trying to force it to show as an object, what's happening is up here, it is still thinking it's on component mode. So you'll need to go to object mode and kind of just memorize that these two, if you don't have if you want to be in object mode and you don't have it in, if you don't select this object mode up here, then it will not stay. Okay? Alright, so here is our object, and now we're going to need to add edge loops. Now if I click off of it again, this is what it looks like. If I click on it and go to hit the 3 key, this is what it looks like in smooth preview mode. Okay? That's pretty amazing. Now the reason why it looks so soft and fluffy is because we have not added edge loops. So remember what this looks like. Okay? So what I'm going to do, and you don't have to do this, but you can if you want to, is I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this, Control D, hit the W key, and move it over to the side. Okay, just for a little bit. And I'm going to add edge loops to this, and we're going to compare the two. Okay? So adding edge loops is really easy, and what it does is it hardens that edge so it doesn't look so soft and pillowy. So this is called hard surface modeling. Okay, so we're going to do a hard surface model. I'm sure you've heard that terminology before. If you haven't, it's basically a way to take an object like this, okay, that's really pillowy looking, and turn it into something more lifelike that you're trying to actually model, and that's considered hard surface modeling. Alright, so let's hit the 1 key. So basically, if you want to see something, what it's going to look like if you were to smooth it and turn it into a high resolution model, is you select it and you hit the 3 key. Okay? Now that doesn't actually smooth it or anything, it's just a smooth preview. It gives you a preview of what it's going to look like. It's kind of like when you're in Photoshop and you're adding a filter. Until you actually select it, okay, you get that preview. Like you can click on that preview and preview it and not preview it. This is how Maya allows you to preview without smoothing. So it gives you just kind of a preview of how it would look if you were to smooth it. Okay, so I'm going to hit the 1 key again. And so adding edge loops, let me give you an example here real quick, is just like we did before. You hold down the Shift key, make sure you're in object mode, which means the object turns green. Hold the Shift key down, right mouse button click over the object, and click on Insert Edge Loop Tool. And so the closer, like when I click on this little line here, it adds an edge loop all the way around the object, which is really nice because we don't want any breaks and creases. So the closer you get to an edge, the harder the edge will look. Okay, the farther, the softer that edge will look. Okay, so it really depends on the object that you're actually creating. So you need to be looking at that. How hard is that edge? How soft is that edge? Is it a really very sharp edge, or is it a rounder edge? Okay, those are things that you need to see, and sometimes it's hard to see in an image though. So you need to actually grab a can of soup or just some kind of a can and look how close or how round those edges are. And one thing to remember when you're modeling is that we cannot leave CG, and we take this for granted in real life, but in CG these edges are considered infinitely sharp. Like they are just perfectly sharp. There's no roundness. No matter how close I get to it, you'll never see a round edge. It'll always be sharp. Okay? In real life that doesn't happen. Even on a razor blade, if you get close enough to it, it looks round. If you don't believe me, type in a microscopic image of a razor blade, and you'll see what I'm saying. So with this edge, we just got to kind of experiment a little bit to see how it looks. Okay, let's go ahead and add edge loops. So basically, you need to add an edge loop to either side of a corner. Okay, so I've got to do an outside edge. That's considered an outside. Then I'm going to do an inside edge like this. Okay. Okay, inside edge into that one, and then an outside edge. So outside, inside, inside, outside. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing with the top, and you just do this all around. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at what this looks like to kind of give you an idea. Let me hit the Q key, go into selection mode, and you'll have to go up here and get him back into object mode, and hit the 3 key. Okay. Now you can see it's quite evident now we have a sharper edge, okay, a sharper crease. And the reason why I duplicated this is because I'm going to hit the 3 key on that one too as well and take a look at what we've got. You can see the huge difference between the two, okay? One has a sharper edge to it and the other one is very, very soft and it doesn't look right, okay? Okay, which one looks more like the image? This one here. Okay. Do we need to make adjustments? Of course. Okay. But we're on the right track, and that's hard surface modeling. Okay? Hard surface modeling. Okay, let's go ahead and click on the object and hit the 1 key again. Click on this object, hit the 1 key. And let's continue, let's move forward. Okay, so if we find that we've made it too sharp, okay, what we can do is you can go in here and right click over and go to Edge. And let's say we think that's way too sharp. Well, what I can do is I can double click on it and the edge will go all the way around, and I can do what's called a delete the edge and vertices at the same time. Now if I just delete the edge, let me explain what happens. Okay, and this is a mistake a lot of students make. If you make a mistake on an edge, you need to get rid of it. It's easy to do. Double click on it, but you want to do Control Delete. Okay, let me explain what that does. So Control Delete deletes the edge and the vertices that go with it. So if I go to Vertex Mode, if I right click over my object and go to Vertex Mode, then you can see that where my vertices are. Now if I Control Z back, let's go back into Object Mode, Control Z back, and you'll see that my edge is still there. Now what if I do this? What if I hit the Q key and just double click on it, on the edge, and then just hit the delete key? Okay, I forget to do Control Delete. Now if I right click over it and go to Vertex Mode, look what's still there. The vertex is left behind. What Control does is it gives you the option to be able to delete the vertex and the edge at the same time. Otherwise I'd have to go in here, I'd have to select that vertex and delete each one of these all the way around, because you cannot have what they call rogue vertices hanging around, because you can't texture that. Okay? You're going to have all kinds of issues and problems if you have these what's called rogue vertices all over the place. Okay? So when you delete an edge, okay, when you delete an edge, what you do is you want to hold the Control key down and the Delete key at the same time, and when I right click and go to Vertex Mode, you can see that they're gone. That's how you properly delete an edge. Okay? Alright. So with that said, I want to move this edge closer over here. You don't have to delete all the edges to redo it. What you can do is you can go ahead and go to Edge Mode and hold down the Shift key and right click over the object and go to Insert, or excuse me, go to Slide Edge Tool. Okay? Again, hold down the Shift key in Component Mode. Okay? It means it's blue. Hold down the Shift key and right mouse button over it, and then go down to Slide Edge Tool. I'm holding down the right mouse button. There we go. Right, now I can double click on this. Okay? And then if I'm holding down my middle mouse button, keep it holding it down, and then move the mouse back and forth. You can see that moves your edge loop. So what I want to do is I want to kind of bring it in the center, okay, and give more of a space between these two. Okay? Now when we do that and we hit the 3 key now, you can see that we've got a softer edge. It's not as hard. Okay? So it really depends on what you're modeling, if that looks good or not. I personally like the very hard edge. Okay? Alright? So I'm going to hit the 1 key again. And it's easy to fix it again, obviously. I can go in here and I want a hard edge right here, so I'm going to go ahead and double click on the edge again. Hold the Shift key down and go to Slide Edge Tool. And then we're going to go ahead and hold down the middle mouse button and get it closer to the edge again. And then what I can do is go back in here and hold the Shift key down and go into Insert Edge Loop. Now the question is, why am I doing this? Why am I having you back and forth, back and forth? The way you guys learn is repetition. Okay? It's easy for me to just show you what to do, but there's going to come a time where I'm not going to. I'm just going to say, listen, you need to add edge loop, and I'm going to go a lot faster than this. This gives you practice. So deleting an edge, inserting another edge, moving the edge around, you're going to be doing this a lot, so it's good to practice it. Okay? There's a reason why I'm having you guys do this. Okay, so I'm going to hit the Q key. I'm going to double click on this, and I'm going to move this edge loop. So hold the shift, right mouse button, go to slide edge loop, and we're going to move that up. Holding down the middle mouse button, I'm just going to move that up a little bit. Now I get kind of an idea of how close I can have my edges before it starts looking too sharp, or it just looks too soft. Okay, so I'm going to go back into object mode. Okay, hit the Q key. I'm always hitting that when I'm done with the tool. And I'm going to hold that shift key, right mouse button, go to insert edge loop tool. And I'm going to continue. Now I'm going to keep this consistent from what I have down here. Okay. And up here, let's go ahead and put these two together pretty closely, but leave a nice little, some distance there. And then the same thing here, kind of follow the distance between those two. And add an edge loop here. Same thing right here. And with the video, when I look at the image here, it's really sharp right there, right in the corner. So I'm going to make that really close, like that. Okay. In here, in this part here, it's not as sharp. It's almost it's close, but not very sharp. So let's go ahead and see what happens when we add an edge loop here and here. Okay, so that's going to sharpen that area up there. And if I kind of check it out, hit the Q key, go back into object mode, and hit the 3 key, and you can see that it's starting to look correct. Okay, so you can see the edge is looking really, really nice, even though it's too wide, right? It's too wide. It's starting to look a lot better. Okay, all right. So select it, hit the 1 key again, and let's continue adding edge loops. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and add an edge loop. Hold the shift key and right mouse button and insert edge loop. And then we're going to bring this to the top, get it pretty close. Okay, and we'll do the same thing down here. Not too close there, but a little closer up here. And not so close down there, and you can see how this is starting to look. Here we go. So you can see I'm adding edge loops just like that. I'm going to hit the Q key, and then the object icon up there. Let's zoom out a little bit and see how this looks. So let's hit the 3 key, click off, and it looks pretty good. Look at that. Now one thing is for sure, that this doesn't pop up that much. In fact, it's probably not popping much at all right there. So I don't mind the rings like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. But I don't like this part right here. So I'm going to hit the 1 key again, and a fast way to fix this is that we're going to go into edge mode, and let's go ahead and double click on that edge and hold down the shift key and double click on the edge below it. And from the side view, okay, from the side view, hit the W key and just pull that down. Kind of zoom in a little bit like this, and pull that down about halfway between this one and the very bottom. Just about halfway, like that. It's hard to see, and so that makes it a little bit flatter right there. Okay. All right, so let's hit the 3 key. Kind of take a look at that. There we go. And that looks better. Okay? That looks much, much better. Now there might be some things I can do in here. Let's say that I don't like how that really looks. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that edge. I don't mind the edge being there, I just think it needs to be scaled out a little bit more. Okay, because I moved it down. So I'm going to scale that out just a little more to separate those two a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to slide that edge closer to it. So I just kind of scaled it out. And I'm going to go ahead and just leave it in this mode. I can click anywhere out here. I'm going to hold the shift key down, and then I'm going to go ahead and slide edge tool. Double click on the edge that I want to do, hold down the middle mouse button, and I'm going to move it up. You can see I can move my mouse back and forth. I know you can't see me doing it, but I'm doing it. I'm going to move that up a little bit closer like that. I'll hit the Q key and click anywhere off, and then go into object mode. Okay, and right click over and go to select, and hit 3. There we go. And that looks a little better. I like that. Alright, so let's take a look at where we started. Hit the 3 key on this one, right? And we've got, this one's got 3 key, and so which one looks more like what we just, like the reference? This one or this one? This one has no edge loops for high resolution modeling, and this one does. And you can see the huge difference. You can see this is accurate. There's a couple things here, like this part is too thick, so I'm going to go ahead and fix that now. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to hit the 1 key on each one of these, select this one, and just delete it because we don't need it anymore. I got my point across, and then what we're going to do with this is we're going to shorten this up, and I'm going to show you a fast way to do that. So from the side view, what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and just select the very bottom part. Now, it's hard to know what we're selecting, right? So what we can do here, and you can see that there's a problem issue with that. We don't really want to change anything in there, right? So what I have to do is, because I don't want to do that, I've got to be very careful how I select things, right? So here's another way of doing it. So sometimes the marquee selecting doesn't really work that well. So what we want to do is we want to go into the edges, double click on each one of these edges, okay? Just on the outside here. I'm holding down the shift key, alright? So those are what needs to go up, okay? So it doesn't select anything else, you can see that. So from the side view now, we're going to go ahead and hit the W key and move those up. Alright, like that. And so let's double check on this object here and see if that looks about right. That looks pretty close. Okay? So now I'm going to click on the object, okay? Hit the 3 key and click off. And there we go. So that looks much better, and I'm really happy with that. Alright, cool. The only other thing I can say is maybe these are up too high, right? Maybe these are up a little bit too high. And that's kind of nitpicking now. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with the nitpicking. You can do the same thing with these. You can go in here, but you have to select all the edges, okay? And we're just going to do the top part, right? So let's go ahead and just move those down a little bit. Double click on that one. I'm going to hit the Q key. Hold the shift key down and double click on all these on the top. I'm just going to move them down a little bit. You can see I've just selected those. I'm going to hit the W key and just move them down just slightly. Not a lot, just slightly, like that. And let's take a look and see if that looks any better. Hit the 3 key. There we go. Yeah, just moving it down a little bit does help. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to, yes, you guessed it, since you put so much work on the top, if you really wanted to practice and stuff, what I would do is do the same thing to the bottom. That will help you with practicing. But what I'm going to do is I am going to just cut it in half and then weld it together and show you how the mirror tool works. Alright, so we'll need to cut it in half. So it doesn't have to be perfectly in half, so just do the best you can. So right click over or hold the shift key down, right mouse click over it and go to Insert Edge Loop Tool. and you want to insert that edge as back close to the center as you possibly can. Okay. It's not crucial though. And what we'll do is now we're going to delete the bottom part. Let's hit the Q key, click anywhere off of here, go into selection mode, and go back into face mode, and just select the bottom of the object so it looks like this. Just marquee select it, and make sure you delete it. There we go. And so one thing we need to do from the front view is make sure that the pivot point is correct. So I'm going to hit the W key, and you can see we're off a little bit. So for this to work, we need to have this this down at the bottom, and then we need to move that object down to 0. Okay. So mirroring tool works best if the object is centered and at 0. Okay. This thing's to remember. Alright, so how do I center this? I can hold the D key, and that actually lets me move the pivot point. D as in David. And then V as in vector. If I hold D and V at the same time, D as in David and V as in vector, I can now move that down to the bottom. And then what I want to do is make sure that my grid snap is on, and then I can move this guy right up here, grid snap, and then I can move this down. Okay? Now if you feel like you're getting lost in these videos, please understand that you guys can slow the videos down on the right hand corner and slow the videos down, or you can pause the videos. So this is how I'd recommend that you guys watch videos, is just watch a little bit of it, a section, 1 or 2 things you can remember, right? And then pause it and then do those pieces, or go back and watch it again, and go back and watch it again, and go back and watch it again. Because a lot of the times you may just miss something, right, that you didn't catch before. So watch the videos more than just once, and that will help. Okay? And I would take little sections, like maybe watch 2 or 3 seconds, or 5 or 6 seconds, depending on how much you can remember, and watch it that way. Okay? And then go ahead and do what I did, and then watch it again and make sure you didn't miss anything. All right, so yeah, that takes longer, but your models will look much better. All right, so now we're going to mirror that over. A couple things we need to do when you use the mirroring tool, because it's very finicky, is that you need to have it in the center. You need to have it down on the grid at 0, 0, 0, which I do. Okay, and you need to make sure there's no gaps, like it's not sticking up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to turn off grid snap up here. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we are now going to go ahead and mirror this. Now, before we mirror that, one last thing I almost forgot is that we need to go into poly modeling shelf. Okay, you want to delete by type history and freeze transformations, and that basically clears all your transforms up on the object, and it also clears the history. So if you ever have problems with mirroring an object over, it might be because you didn't delete the history or you didn't freeze transformations. Okay? With that said, now it should work. So I'm going to push down my spacebar and go to mesh and go down to mirror. Okay? And whenever you see a little box, go ahead and open it up. There's more attributes that you can change, okay, to make things work properly. Alright, so we can go from world to object to bounding box. Let's just keep it at world. That is actually the reset. Okay, so if I reset things, so edit, reset. So it wants to start with world, we'll edit. And then mirror axes X. Well, X is in the red, the red arrow is X, and this is plus and that's negative. This is Z, that's plus and that's negative, and then Y, up and down, and that's negative. So this is plus, if this is plus, so if we're going to mirror it in the Y, right, this is the Y direction, we need to go negative, right? We need it to mirror down. So let's find that. Okay, so mirror axis in Y, right? And in mirror direction, we have a choice of plus or negative, and we want it to go down, so that's negative. Merge settings combined with the original, yes. Go ahead and make sure that's selected. Border merge, border vertices, automatic, yes. Everything else looks good. And click mirror. And there you go. It may give you a warning of some stuff here, mirror, mel, 5848, no object matches name, but I'm not too concerned because it actually did what I wanted to do. One of the things I do want to check though is go to Vertex Mode and just select a vertex. Don't marquee select it, just select a vertex and move it up or down. And if you notice that it's moving, you know, more in just one, then you're good. If you see it move up and you got a gap there, then it didn't merge the vertices. So what the mirror tool did is it mirrored it over and it welded all of these pieces together. Okay. One thing about this is we don't really need this edge, so let's go ahead and go to Edge Mode, right mouse button, click over it, and double click on this. Okay. And we don't just delete it, right? We do Control Delete because that deletes the vertices too. And there's our food can. And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and go to the front view and move that back into position right on top of the grid like that. Okay, perfect. And one of the things I want to talk to you about is we can go ahead and turn the background off. We don't need this anymore, so I'm going to turn it off. And what I'm going to do is I got pretty close on here. As you can see, I'm zooming in on the bottom. What I can do with this, which is kind of fun, is I'm going to show you how to nudge. Now I know in Photoshop you can nudge, so in Maya you can nudge your object down 1 pixel at a time. So hold the Alt key and the down arrow key. Whoops. Nope, that's not it. You have to select the object. Okay, it is the Alt key. So I'm going to Control Z back again. It got stuck. And if that happens, just kind of click off and then click back on the object. Hold the Alt key and the arrow button, and it lets you go ahead and move it pixel by pixel so you can get it really precise. And that's for precise movements only. It would take you forever. So if you want broad strokes, just go ahead and click on the object and move it with the manipulator. But if you want real fine detail strokes, then you're going to want to hold the Alt key and the arrow. And you can nudge it the other way too, to the side too, if you want to. Alright, so let's go ahead and move that down. And we want that to the top of the grid. There we go. Let's go ahead and zoom out. And that is your high poly model. Now, this is what I consider your edge loop model. So what I want you to do is to go in here, and this is also considered medium poly, but what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and duplicate this. We don't want to mess with this because what if we want to make subtle changes? You can't do it to the high poly, so you always want to save. So we have the original, we have the low poly, and this is going to be the high poly, okay? But what we want to do is duplicate this and make this an edge loop piece that we can save. So let's go ahead and do Control D, duplicate, and click on one of these guys right here. And I want you to go ahead and rename this edge loop. Okay, and go ahead and close that. Alright, and now this is the high poly still, right? Okay, so that's in that layer. I'm going to turn it off and on so you guys can see it. Alright, and in that layer, what I want to do is just make sure nothing's behind it. So I'm going to click on it, because a lot of times when we do Control D and it doesn't get into the layer properly, then you're going to have two objects over top of each other and you don't even know it. What would it look like if I did that? Well, basically when I click on the object, click off, don't marquee select, just click off, and then click back on and then move it, and if there's another one underneath, then you need to get rid of it unless it's something you need to keep. So a lot of times when you're doing layers, you may forget that you duplicated, or you may have a ghost. I call it a ghost object. So let's go ahead and delete that. Let's bring this back to where it was. Okay. So 0 on here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to really create a high poly object with this. How do we do that? Okay, we got the edge loops, we got everything's looking good. Now you're going to go into spacebar, mesh, and then we need to go into smooth and go into the option box. And in the option box you can see that I got a division of 2, and that's good. Okay, let's see what it looks like with the division of 2. Okay, great. I'm going to click off. There we go. And you can see our beautiful can. Okay, our high poly can is all completed. Looks pretty good. Alright, congratulations guys, you just completed module 1 as far as the modeling goes. We've got a couple more things to do in presenting your models to me, and we'll talk about that in part 5. Alright, I'll see you then.